My name's Claire Newman and I work on the atmospheres of Mars and Titan. So this is a view of the planet Mars photographed from Earth. And on the right here is a picture of Mars taken by Viking 1 orbiter from orbit of Mars in the 1970s. And I also work on Titan, Saturn's only moon with a thick atmosphere. And here's an image of Saturn and Titan and another one of Saturn's moons seen by telescope from the Earth, and then a beautiful image of Titan taken by the Cassini spacecraft photographed in front of Saturn's rings. And you can see it's still very hard to see much detail for Titan, and we'll talk about that later on. So what is an atmosphere? Well, this is a beautiful view of layers in the Earth's atmosphere from the International Space Station taken at sunset over the Indian Ocean. And here's Mars's atmosphere. You can see just over the limb of the planet, again, little layers of dust and gas. So the atmosphere is a region above a planet or a moon's surface that contains gases. Often these gases contain clouds or thick hazes or dust. And sometimes, as on Titan, these are so thick that it's difficult to see through them to the surface underneath. In the Earth's atmosphere, atoms and molecules of atmospheric gases regularly collide with each other, as in the little animation showing here, although it's slowed down many millions of times. But above the atmosphere is a region where there are so few atoms and molecules that collisions almost never happen. This region is called the exosphere. Now, some people call the exosphere part of the atmosphere, but we're going to define an atmosphere as a collisional atmosphere and say anything above that is the exosphere. In the exosphere, the only thing that stops air drifting off into space is gravity. So it's sort of like throwing a ball up, there's no air resistance, and it kind of comes back down a nice parabolic curve. There are still some atoms and molecules that are moving really fast though, and they get lost to space, and that's because there's nothing there other than gravity to stop them from leaving. And it's very unlikely that they'll collide with anything else because there's so little up there. So do other planets have atmospheres and exospheres? Well, most planets in our solar system and even some moons have proper collisional atmospheres. Like Earth, all of those atmospheres have exospheres above them. But there are some planets and lots of moons in our solar system that only have an exosphere. The planet Mercury is one example. Now, on Mercury, gas molecules are continuously released from the surface, but then they're lost to space. So the gas around Mercury is an exosphere, not an atmosphere. And here is a display of all of the bodies with collisional atmospheres in our solar system, minus a few moons. So let's take them one by one. So we're not counting Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun, because it doesn't have an atmosphere. So the first planet is Venus, and these are true color images. The second planet is Earth, that has an atmosphere. Then Mars has a very thin atmosphere, but it's still there. Then Jupiter and Saturn, the gas giants, that have very thick, deep atmospheres. Uranus and Neptune, the ice giants, and these also have thick atmospheres. Even Pluto, the dwarf planet now, also has an atmosphere, but it's very, very, very thin. And it's actually so thin that when Pluto is far enough from the Sun, and it's very, very cold in its outer reaches of its orbit, some of the atmosphere actually, or all of the atmosphere actually freezes out to the surface of Pluto. And we'll see that Mars does something a little bit similar, but on Mars, it's only part of the atmosphere that freezes out. So there's also Titan, which is a moon of Saturn. That has a very thick atmosphere. It's actually even thicker than the Earth's, and we're not quite sure why that is. And then there's Triton, which is a moon of Neptune, and it has an atmosphere thick enough to have clouds in it, which was seen by Voyager spacecraft when it went past. And then finally, there are two moons of Jupiter that have collisional atmospheres, Io and Callisto. But those ones are really, really tiny.